Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
Well, you asked me if you should be drunk, and I said no, and I said maybe?
Yeah. Well, it's too late now.
Why?
Because I don't even have anything with me.
Just go get some wine or something.
Should I go get my can of wine?
Oh, you could. I mean, okay, so the audience doesn't know what's going on. Well, they probably do because they've clicked on it, but I was going to surprise Kristin with an episode, and I felt very confident that she would be ready to go and fine, like she wouldn't need to prep for it or whatever. So we're recording it now. This is it. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know what it's about. Do you have any? Well, I was gonna say, do you have any predictions? But I was like, that might be dangerous.
Well, I have like 3 guesses.
Okay.
My first guess was that you were going to want to talk to me about the Oscar nominations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking about it a little more. And my second guess was that you maybe want to talk about Fleabag. And then related to that, my third guess was that you maybe want to talk about Schitt's Creek.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I might be totally wrong.
Well, it's Fleabag.
Oh, yay!
Hello, everybody. I'm Will.
And I'm Kristin.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, we're going to finally talk about Fleabag. Yay! I know it's late, but I figured Kristin would want to do it.
Yeah.
So, oh boy, Fleabag. You watched it last year.
Like early spring.
Okay, and you watched 1 and 2 in one go?
I watched it in within the span of 4 days, probably.
Okay.
I watched a lot of season 1, and then it was a handful of days later I finished season 1 and 2 at the same time.
Why did you watch it? What prompted you to?
I just was kind of bored one night, and Will was working late, and I was like, whatever. And I just was scrolling through Amazon, and I just was like, I've heard good things about this. And season 2 had already come out in last February, I think. So I think I watched it in March or April. And I just was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It was already getting a lot of buzz. People were talking about it, and I was like, I'll watch it. And then I just hard went all the way in it.
You would not shut the fuck up about it for a couple of months.
It's very good.
And right around the time, it also Sade, she watched it on Offscreen Babble, and so she was talking about it. And then you two kept trying to talk about it during our Claws coverage, and I was like, oh my God. I thought the title of it, the whole premise of it seemed very unappealing to me. I could not imagine watching a show called Fleabag about a woman who can't get her life together. That sounds terrible.
I mean,
and
sounds amazing.
Then... And then it swept the Emmys.
Yeah.
And then it subsequently swept the Golden Globes. Mm-hmm. And so there was this kind of oh my God, what is this thing? And also the other thing I knew about it was that it was done.
Yeah.
That's it. Done. No questions, and you kept going on and on and on and on about how perfect it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched the first episode, and I watched the first episode with my mom. I wouldn't recommend that.
That was your first mistake?
Yeah. Also, we were trying to kill time before Jeopardy.
Oh.
So it was it was one of those, we've got 40 minutes to watch a pilot episode of something.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really, and the thing, I watch all kinds of stuff with my mom. I watched Game of Thrones with my mom. I watched True Blood with my mom. And I'm like, there's sex in that, whatever. And I realized that high fantasy sex and soap opera drama is different from real life, not quite coming of age because she's in her 30s, but well,
it opens on a scene of
there's not a lot of talking about anal sex in True Blood.
It opens on a scene of a dude just putting it up her ass without even asking. And she is into it.
And then she wonders,
do I have a massive asshole?
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of and then the music's and I was like, oh, okay. And so it was safe to say I didn't really get it. And when it was over, I laughed a couple times. And when it was over, Mom was like, I think that one's more for you. She's like, I'll just let you watch that one.
God
and I
love
said,
Teresa.
I was like, I think I'm going to keep watching it, but I really wasn't all that impressed after the pilot episode. And I did look around and I found several people said that it does build.
Yeah, it definitely builds.
It's not like the first episode of Desperate Housewives where you gotta click play.
No, it's definitely not like that. It's very serialized and you are getting information about her all the time.
It's funny, I mentioned, compared to Desperate Housewives, because there is a mystery in the first season.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that until well into the first season, where I was like, what am I not understanding? And so, but it didn't throw me the way The Witcher did with its like out of sync.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a little easier to,
I know, it's different.
to place this for sure for us.
But so I watched the second episode. It was actually pretty immediately because there's 2 seasons, 6 episodes each, 30 minutes. Like you can get through it in an afternoon if you're really committed.
Yeah.
So it was the second episode, and I knew I laughed twice. The first was when she was in the bath with the hot guy.
Yeah.
And she asked when he knew he was hot.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something about how when he was like 13, when his aunt started acting weird around him.
Yeah.
And it was the way she glanced at the camera. Like she glanced at the camera like a yikes, but also I'm fascinated to keep going. And that made me laugh out loud. And then the second time that made me laugh out loud, well, I was mostly mortified, but it was when Harry was like, I think we need to do like a masturbation break. And I was like, he does not understand her at all.
No,
I was like, so, and he's actually really cute.
He's super cute.
He's too skinny, but.
He's young Colin Firth from Mamma Mia too.
Oh, yeah. He's got such a good face.
He does.
He's so skinny though, but he like. So that whole scene about how he had hidden her vibrator and how it was going to bring them closer and stuff, I was mortified. And then when he said goodbye to her and then goodbye to her vagina, I screamed. I was so like, I couldn't believe it.
So you ended up liking it.
Oh my God, it's brilliant.
Yay! Oh, yay.
No, it's so good.
You watched both seasons.
Yeah, I don't know how Andrew watched the whole second season with me.
Nice.
He was like, what do you watch? He was like, I want to watch something. And I looked at him and I was like, you might like this.
Yeah.
And he did. He watched the whole thing. And he wasn't. Oh, I just spit all over the place. Sorry if you got picked up on the microphone. It was like everywhere. It's on my screen. He wasn't like cackling, but it was like at least 2 times an episode. I could just hear him be like, so it's really hard to explain.
Yeah, it's not easy. I was going to say, because Will and I got to go to see, she reprised this on stage because season 1 is based on a one-woman show that she did for Edinburgh Fringe like years ago, and that's how she like got the show. And like, I mean, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is a big deal now. She's like screenwriting the new Bond movie. She's in a Star Wars. I mean, it was very interesting to me. So we got to see her perform the one-woman show because she went back and it was a National Theatre Live thing that they broadcast at our local theater. I find it so fascinating. And especially because I'm going to get this quote totally wrong, but there was a quote from her about why Fleabag is such an interesting character and about how you can like hide stuff about yourself in telling the truth. Because she said something about how she's so truthful and like brazenly honest about her sex life, hoping that it will detract from the things she's being deceitful about. Which is like all of her emotional shit and the stuff with Boo and like all of the stuff and her mom dying and her relationship with her sister and her dad and the stepmother and everything. It's all very couched beneath this layer of brutal honesty about her sexuality and sex life in a way that you think she's being honest and you can't tell what she's lying about. And I thought that was such an interesting like way to place a character, like an interesting place to put a character in this notion of radical honesty about one thing specifically.
Mm-hmm. Or even it's almost even to scare people away. Like,
yeah, where it's like, I'm going to be super blunt about this thing that people aren't normally blunt at in order to protect my like soft gooey center, and also to drive you away so you don't want to look for my soft gooey center.
Yeah, because even the guy with the teeth, I was like, why is she doing this? Like, because she seemed completely uninterested in him, but it also, for me, it was like he was an opportunity for her to just be weird.
Yeah, it also, it's a notion because she was like, Harry's left me, but only for like 3 days. I've got to just go get whatever sex I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was like, he'll do in a way that was like, and then by the end of it, she's put so much effort into it that she can't not have sex with him, even though she really doesn't want to. It's so fascinating. And I love watching women who are messes. And she's like a legitimate mess. She's not like a rom-com mess, you know, where she's like clumsy and she eats cheeseburgers. She's like a real mess. Her business is failing. Her best friend is dead. She has no relationship with her father. Her sister is really stilted.
And this gets into season 2 when this happens, but it didn't dawn on me that she didn't have friends.
No, she has no friends. And her godmother is now sleeping with her father. And it just is like, wow. Mm-hmm. There's like so much going on for her. And just sort of having indiscriminate sex is her way of dealing with all of the emotional upheaval in her life. And it was just so fascinating to me. And it's one of those things where like I feel like we as a society say things so often that they stop making sense. And what I'm about to say is going to be one of those things, but it felt so real. It felt just like how a real person would act. Like because she wasn't like depressed. You know what I mean? There was not a lot of like overtly depressive moments where she's not often just like sobbing because she can't handle it. It just is like very realistic self-destructive behavior.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where to go from there.
I was curious, did you have a favorite character?
Oof. Oh, God. Favorite. I object to the use of the word favorite for this character, but I loved Olivia Colman, her godmother. Oh my God. That woman. And I knew I liked Olivia Colman, but
she's fucking amazing. The thing about Olivia Colman is that we so often only see her in drama or comedy like The Favorite.
Well, it's like she's in Murder on the Orient Express, but she's the maid. Like
right. And I know that she can do comedy because she's done other comedy, but like to see her, this was like kind of my first experience with her doing straight up comedy. And it was just, I mean, I can't even tell you how many women I know who are like her.
She's also kind of very strangely a babe. It's really weird when it comes out. Like, it's almost like she could play Nigella Lawson. You know what I mean?
She could play Nigella Lawson.
And it's like the godmother was so funny. She was such a worthy adversary and vice versa.
Yes.
And the fucking statue, how that was a series-wide arc.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. And I know that you agree with this, and I'm hesitant to bring it up now because you're going to take it and run. But her relationship with her sister.
Yes, because I was going to say, Claire, for me, the characters that I love the most are Claire and Godmother and the priest.
Yeah, Claire was favorite isn't actually then yes, I actually liked Claire in a way that I was rooting for her. And that probably got, I was attempting to stay linear, but that's not going to happen. We're jumping around.
Also, both these seasons have been out for over a year.
Yeah.
So.
The biggest laugh that the show got out of me, in all honesty, was the smash cut to Claire's haircut.
Amazing. Will laughed out loud too. Out loud. He was like, "Oh my God," and I was like, "Yeah, it's amazing."
And Because something about this show, when I was watching it, because of the way that you and a couple people had hyped it up, there was a part of me that was looking at it like a riddle, like a math problem. And I'm like, what about this is so good? How can this really be that good?
It just is hard to explain when you're trying not to spoil things. And there are things to spoil.
It's partly that it is that good, which it really is, but it's also the timing. It's like a voice that we need right here and right now. And it's the combination of how it's using conventional comedy and storytelling methods and then the ways that it's pushing boundaries. Because it's like the concept of breaking the fourth wall is not new, but the exact way in which she's doing it felt fresh.
It also she rivals Jim from The Office for like looks at the camera,
like micro looks and stuff. Yeah,
especially I think my favorite one is in the season 2 premiere, and Claire is being a bitch because she thinks that Fleabag tried to kiss her husband, which who wants to kiss Brett Gelman? No one.
Truly a thankless role on this show. He was very good, but just disgusting.
I totally we'll get to Martin, but okay. Claire is basically just like making nasty asides to Fleabag the whole time, and she makes this comment about how putting pine nuts on your salad doesn't make you an adult, and Fleabag just looks straight at the camera and goes, "Fucking does."
Yes,
my favorite.
I was like, sure it does. Fuck off, Claire.
It's those moments specifically that
you really feel like you're in the scene, and especially because that first episode, I thought I had skipped an episode because I knew who the priest was because I know who Andrew Scott was, but I was like, where did he come from? And then like not a second after I thought that, Fleabag goes, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm right there. You're so right about the pine nuts in the salad. That was one of my favorite things too. But back to the haircut, it was the way that the show had been giving us information, and Claire calls in a complete state of hysterics. And so you're like, shit, somebody died, like something happened. And then the realization that she got a bad haircut, which frankly is a tragedy when you have like a wedding coming up.
Yeah, it also is like the worst haircut. It's truly awful. She specifically is like, I look like a pencil. And it's just like, you do look like a pencil.
And they win, and they were trying to take it out on the poor hairstylist. And then he gets the picture out of the trash can, and it just was the haircut.
It's the exact haircut. Yeah.
The way the information is presented, it's honestly like some shows I feel like are like cooking recipes where you can just throw stuff in, and as long as the ratio is okay, it's good. But this was like baking, where it was like if anything was just like 1% off, the flan would collapse. You know, the souffle would just completely deflate.
100%.
This was like 100%. A souffle,
and that's what I think. Where we can get to Brett Gelman, because he is necessary. Like, you can't not have him in this show, and especially because in season 1 he's not as disgusting and horrible as he is in season 2. He's like trying to be an okay guy, and then she outs him basically, and he is no longer trying to be an okay guy. He's just like, and even all the way down to his clothes and his haircut and his beard, everything has devolved about him in season 2.
Oh my God. I mean, we could do a full episode just on the dinner scene. That's probably one of the best. I mean, that's up there with the tavern scene in Inglourious Bastards, or like
the season 2 premiere.
The two dinner scenes in Teen Wolf. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I remember when I watched it, because I watched it so close together, and I really liked season 1, and then season 2 started, and I was like, this is something different. And I was like, this is something specialer than season 1.
And the fucking waitress.
Amazing.
There's so many unspoken things in the show where it's very of a generation. Like I'm sure it'll age well, but it feels perfect for this moment, because the way that Claire was like, gosh, this sauce is disgusting, and immediately the waitress was like, how is everything? And she's like, delicious. Because it's like that's not a fight she's prepared to have at that point. Like, it's just, and the way the dynamic, like the need to appease the waitress who's trying to appease you. And it just like because she just keeps chiming in. And then, when Claire's in the bathroom and Fleabag, she's like, I need pad, and Fleabag is like, I know a waitress who would jump on that.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. And again, that goes back to it being so realistic, because I think that's what Phoebe Waller-Bridge is so good at, is creating realistic dialogue.
And characters, yeah. Because the whole thing with Claire and the Danish guy that she works with that she's interested in, all of that is working fine. He's handsome,
Yeah.
we get it, because we understand her and we understand what she needs.
Yeah.
And just the reveal that his name is also Claire is
Yeah.
hysterical in a way that the joke, it only works because we know Claire.
Yeah. And
the way that we do.
Because I think it only works because we know Claire, because she's not actually that narcissistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what I love about that moment specifically is that it so perfectly mirrors the way that Fleabag reacts to her finding out that the guy's name is Claire, so perfectly mirrors later when Claire finds out that Fleabag is in love with the priest. They have like very similar reactions to it, to finding out.
I'm trying to remember, was that when... Because she's talking about, she's like, I met someone, and Claire was like, tell me more, and she's like, he's a priest, and didn't Claire just deflate?
Yeah, she just like puts her head in her hands. With her terrible haircut and everything, and she just is like, are you fucking kidding me?
Because for a moment, she had this glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
It was just like that's a perfect analogy for the show, is it's like right when you think you're safe, it's like, bam! And you're like, oh God, how could I not have known? It's a masterclass in timing, I would say, comedic timing.
I agree. I totally agree.
And the editing, because I loved all the smash cuts, the way it would just like smash cut real quickly to something and then back. And I know a lot of people talked about how there's 2 seasons. Some people didn't even want a season 2. We got it. It was excellent. Everyone's making a big deal about how there's not going to be more. I understand that. I've accepted that. I'm fine with it. But I will lament, because I think from a story point, it's especially, and I'm not ready to get there yet, but the way that it ends, I understand why it's over. But I desperately feel robbed of the opportunity to spend a little bit more time with these characters.
Well, that's the thing, is I could live with these characters for the rest of my life. I think there are endlessly hilarious things that we could see and experience and do with them. But at the same time, I find the ending so perfect and beautifully done and emotionally resonant that I can't imagine how there would ever be more.
Well, and you also, because you don't exactly understand what show you're watching in both seasons. You think you're watching one thing and then it becomes another. And before we had moved off of Claire, I mean, I'm sure we'll come back to her, but I did want to say that I honestly think she has the best arc. I think she has the better arc, even though, it's Fleabag's show and Fleabag does have an arc. Because of the nature of the way it ends, kind of the point of it is that we don't get to see, like, that is such a fascinating concept that we, the viewers, are a coping mechanism.
Yes, because when she is in that therapy session with Fiona Shaw, who's amazing, she is like, yeah, I have friends, they're with me all the time, and she looks right at the camera, and that is the moment that you're like, oh, we are part of her problem.
Weird, wild.
Yeah.
Because for me, I remember that, but where it actually hit me was when the priest was like, where did you go? And where I was like, oh, they know she's doing that. And it's not so much that they know, but
only he knows.
I thought her sister said something at one point.
No, he's the only one who knows, because that I've watched so many things with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and she said she didn't want to come back for a season 2 because she couldn't imagine how to make it different. And then she was like, then I realized, what if there was a character who can see what she's doing? Like, he can see through all of her coping mechanisms. And that was when she like invented the priest. And I was like, that is wild. And so the fact that he can like see that she's going somewhere else in her mind when she's speaking to us, the audience, is what sort of makes them soulmates.
And so her story absolutely keeps going, but the fact that we are unhealthy to her is wild.
Yeah,
it's like
100%. I think it's such a cool commentary. It's such an interesting way to present that specific type of. I wouldn't even necessarily call it a mental illness, but that particular kind of coping as being negative.
I was going to say crutch.
Yeah, crutch works. Yeah, I don't know. Every single thing about season 2. I mean, for me, I think it will go down as like top 3 TV shows of all time.
Mm-hmm. I love the way that things came back when you didn't expect, and things paid off in a way. Like, I could have never predicted that the guy at the bank would be such a crucial character to the series.
Yeah.
And just that scene at therapy, which that has to be one of the funniest running bits in anything ever, that she's at a therapy, like a type of, it's not even therapy. What do you call it?
It's like a retreat, like a women's retreat.
She's at a women's retreat where they are silently cleaning, and there's a men's retreat next door that's meant for men who have problems with women. So you just keep hearing slut like they would do something, and you can just hear this disembodied male voice, like screaming slurs. That was so funny. And the thing she said to her sister about, like, we pay them to come silently clean their house. And the poor girl, because they're not allowed to talk, they can only communicate through the chalkboard. And the poor girl that gets attacked by the bees in the one scene.
It says, and then I've been stung by a wasp in the next scene.
And it's like, it was just so. And so she ends up, this guy from the bank that like rejected her loan is in this therapy group for men. And so she ends up seeing him, and they have a sit down where he apologizes to her and kind of explains his point of view. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of hashtag not all men. However, that's true. Not all men. And
well, he also isn't really a not all men, because he was like, I touched a coworker's breast more than once and she didn't want it. And he is taking responsibility.
Well, and what I meant for that is that everyone has a story. It's like even the jackass on Reddit might have a story. It might be capable of growth. And so the fact that she sits there silently and listens to his thing, and the way that she just, like, he was talking about how he got in trouble for touching a coworker, and she offers her breast up for him to squeeze. And he's like, no, thank you. And it like, it was just so funny. And she ended up talking to him, and I do actually forget what she said, but it was good.
In her cafe?
No, in that scene where they were sitting on the log.
Oh, she does start talking. I don't remember what she said either, but I mean, you could just reach in and pull out any line of dialogue from this show, and it's something that's like probably profound.
And Boo was weird. Not in a bad way. It was just strange because I didn't know who this person was. And I definitely got the feeling that they certainly had an intense relationship. I didn't exactly think it was romantic, but I also,
No, it wasn't.
The lines were blurred. The lines were weird. This is also something that I find interesting. I can't think of another example, but it's happened a few times with other stories where I find it very interesting when a show can shock you with an obvious outcome.
Yeah.
Because what happened to Boo is kind of exactly what we all thought.
Yeah.
But that it still felt cutting when it happened.
Well, I think that also goes back to the thing that she said about the radical honesty, because it's like one of the first things that Fleabag tells us is that she had a best friend that she opened the cafe with, but her boyfriend slept with someone else, and she walked into the bike lane hoping to just be injured so he'd visit her in the hospital, but she died. And so we learned that very early in the series, and then you just are sort of, but you keep coming back to Boo specifically, and you're like, there's obviously more here. And you're right. It is one of the more obvious ways it could have gone, but you're also right. It is still shocking. It's very, I think it's the mark of a very deft screenwriter that can do something like that. That like you said, make the obvious things still surprising.
Well, I mean, frankly, it's something to make a radical comparison, it's kind of like Game of Thrones, where in the very first scene of the very first episode, we see literal ice zombies. And yet by the time at the end of season 1, when Daenerys comes out with the dragons on her shoulder, we're shocked that there's magic. And it's like we somehow, it's something you said to me when we were working on Fairy Tale, where you were like, the audience will always forget the first thing you tell them.
Almost always, yeah.
And it was wild. I liked the hot guy. What was his name?
He doesn't have a name. Arsehole guy.
Oh, that's who that was. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like that meant jerk. But
no, like he put it in her ass.
Yeah, okay. I liked him. He was funny. I mentioned the statue earlier. Oh, do you want to know the precise moment that I decided I was going to watch this and it paid off?
Okay.
I saw the clip of her unpacking the award and dropping it.
Yeah.
And that looked so funny. That's when I was like, I need to watch this show. And
well, it's even more funny in context because as Claire is walking out of the room, she's like, don't play with that. And then the first thing Fleabag does is pick it up and drop it immediately.
And there's a part of you that's like, Claire, why would you ever bring her into the situation? But you do. You just, and it like that whole episode was fascinating from both Fleabag and Claire's perspective, because that episode was weirdly about Claire. That's also where we got, was it Kristin Scott Thomas?
Yes.
The businesswoman,
yeah,
with the scene in the bar, that was so good. Are you okay?
Don't get me started. I love it so much. The whole speech she goes on about how women are born with pain inside them and men have to invent things like church to make themselves feel guilt. I was like, you're blowing my mind, girl.
About how women are machines. Yeah.
It was friggin' amazing. I have always loved Kristin Scott Thomas. I think she is underrated as an actress because she does not get talked about enough. But that episode and her scenes with Fleabag specifically are some of the best in the show. So good.
And like, because I wanted Fleabag to go with her. I was like, yeah, go with her. And she was like, no. She was like,
you're not my type. She's like, honestly, I can't be fucked.
Yeah. She was like, this isn't gonna work for you. This is just another coping mechanism. And yeah, that was wild.
I think I loved so much about season 2 how many people called her out and how much she took it to heart. In a way that she didn't in season 1. It was like exhibiting growth while still knowing that she was not where she needed to be. But she was working towards it. Season 2 it's amazing.
And the statue, oh my God, that plot line is so funny. And especially when she brings the statue back and that whole scene is awful, or that whole episode is awful. And I forget.
Just because of Godmother?
Yeah, I forget what Godmother said, but something happened. And so Claire got mad and re-stole the statue.
Yeah.
And then when they were at the sexposition and she told the story about how the statue was stolen, but that created another work of art. And it was like a woman, what was it named? Woman wronged?
Yeah, a woman robbed, I think.
And it was just the empty display.
Yeah.
That was so funny. And just all the penises, that was so funny.
I didn't notice it the first time I watched it, but when Will and I were watching it the other day, he laughed out loud when Godmother is like, have you spotted your father yet? And Fleabag is like, yeah, he's over there or whatever. And she's like, no, on the wall of penises. And you can tell that Fleabag's just guessing. She's just like throwing her hand up and she's like, that one. And it turns out to be right. And Godmother is like, the look on Olivia Colman's face is, she's like, yes, that's right. And then she like leaves immediately. It's so hilarious.
It happens a few times where she like bests her. Because even with the statue at the very end, when she returns the statue, and actually a very sweet scene, she gives it to her as a gift, as a present. And it very, very briefly feels like a moment between these two people. And then Olivia Colman's like, it's so funny you globbed onto this statue because it's of your mother.
Yeah.
And Fleabag was just kind of like, huh? Like,
yeah. And I cannot even explain how much I love that she stole it again. Because she has it at the end.
It just goes to show you, but that's part of why I know that the story is not done, even though our look into it is.
Right.
Because the statue, it's like that's indicative of the journey. And I guess that brings us to Hot Priest. What exactly was the end? I was confused by the end.
He chose God.
That's what
Instead of
thought.
her.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's when he comes to sit next to her at the bus station, and they just look at each other for a little while, and she gets to the realization, and she says, "It's God, isn't it?" And he says, "Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
And so he loved her too, but he loves God more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, the performance by Andrew Scott is astounding.
He was a fascinating portrayal of a religious figure in this day and age. You know, a world that is rapidly, needing less religion, and his spirit and energy and insight is some of the more profound examples of what religion is and can be and should be. And like, it was just very, very interesting how, she's obviously an atheist. I would imagine Phoebe Waller-Bridge is. And the fact that the show really wasn't condescending towards him or religion.
No, not at all. And they had nice little debates about it and everything. But again, it's one of those silly things where I think my favorite part was when she says something about, "Oh no, I don't believe in God." And then the portrait falls down behind her, and he just says, "I love it when he does that."
Mm-hmm. And it happens like 2 more times.
It does. And I just was like, that's hilarious and so cute. And he's so charming. And you can tell that he also has problems. I don't know. There's something about Andrew Scott, obviously, but then there's something about their chemistry together. And she even said it when she won the Emmy, I think. She was like, the whole of season 2 was honestly, was it SNL? Mm-hmm. She was like, so I could just get Andrew Scott to dress up like a priest and tell me he loves me. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
it took 5 years, but I did it.
It worked out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they are a pair, because they are already working on something else together. And they are a pair that I am very interested to see the creative output going forward from the two of them, because the chemistry that they have is electric.
The Fox thing was so funny, and that was...
We laughed out loud at that too.
That was a wackier one. That was really, I don't want to say high concept, but that was a little bit of an out there bit.
Yeah.
But it ended so perfectly with the Fox just on the street. And she's like, he went that way.
He went that way. Go, yeah. I don't know.
When he was like, the Fox was in the window of a train. It was wild. Oh, God, I'm trying to think, because there's so many more. We didn't really talk about her father, and it was a really interesting, nuanced look at family.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to find, in the 2 years that we've been doing this, I've really been studying, the art of storytelling. And I've really come to find that more often than not, truly nuanced storytelling is through exploration and not telling, like not preaching.
Oh, for sure.
And when I was younger, I thought it was preaching. I thought I had to come up with, I thought I had to figure out the answer and then tell it to people. And it's not that. It's more through asking questions. And
well, there's such a more satisfying feeling from identifying with a part of a character as opposed to just being like, this is such and such, she's into fashion. It's like those couple of scenes that Fleabag has with her dad are so interesting because of what they say, but also because of what you can tell they're dancing around, which is his dead wife and her dead mother. And it's just like, you can understand how he managed to end up in this relationship with Godmother, because I mean, she obviously pounced at a vulnerable moment, but it also, you can tell that he just is like, I don't want to be alone. And she's like, why can't you just love my mother forever?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, and I'm asking because you have better radar for this than I do, but is Godmother really honestly as terrible as she seems on the show, or is part of that because of what the position Fleabag puts her in and the things she does to her?
I think she is as terrible because Claire hates her as much.
Okay.
And Claire is more reasonable. So even if it is from Fleabag's perspective, the fact that Claire hates her just as much and Fleabag views Claire as being a more reasonable human.
Because there were a handful of moments where Godmother, it seemed like an actually nice connection, like an actually genuine, like when she gave the statue back. That felt like a real moment to me. And I thought maybe she wouldn't be so awful if Fleabag wasn't constantly putting her through the ringer. But yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't 100% know. It's hard to interpret something like that through so many veils where, like, I'm more comfortable interpreting her as shown. And she is shown as being horrible, like truly horrible. Like, she makes Fleabag sit backwards when she's doing that portrait of
Yeah,
Fleabag
but that's
and
well
Claire.
into their established relationship, though. It's
I mean, that's fair.
So we don't know. Like I said, this game of tennis could have been,
Sure, for years.
Yeah, so
well, 3 at least, yeah.
It was just a question, because it goes back to the moment that I was like, she has a handful of genuine moments that it at least to me it seemed like, but granted, I mean that's the same logic that would have gotten me in The White Witch Jadis's Palace or Golden Compass. You know what I mean? I could be like, well, she was nice and her monkey smiled, and so.
Yeah, she gave me Turkish delight.
Yeah, I don't know, but very good and very, very interesting. And there's also something about it where it's like, I don't know where this show gets off being this interesting. That's part of it. Is it's like, this is a 30-minute comedy about a woman whose life is messy. Like, how can it be this profound? And I think that's part of the whole thing. That's part of the experience. Well,
it's obviously also why Phoebe Waller-Bridge has 3 shows going. Yeah. Right now, and she's writing the James Bond movie. I mean, it's just, I want to know how she does it, because she's our age. Yeah. Which makes me feel disgusting.
That's another thing, because when watching the show, she herself is more of a babe than I realized. Yeah. And especially that jumpsuit she wore in the dinner scene.
I have almost bought that like 7 times. It would not look as good on me as it looks on Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but I have almost bought it. It's only like 50 pounds.
I was gonna say she's a plank, so
yeah.
But I think that's a good point. Now I would need to watch it again, to write down quotes and really mine stuff. Yeah. I'm happy for Claire and Claire. their whole dynamic. I really enjoyed it. It's going to be one that sticks with me for a long time.
Yes. See? So, I'm so glad you get it.
Yeah. And I fought it. Well, I didn't fight it. I wasn't actively fighting it. But like I said, I watched the first episode and I was kind of like, and just.
No, it definitely builds.
Going. Yeah, keep going.
It builds and builds and builds. And then I think, in my opinion, the finale is transcendent. Especially, there's so many good things that happen in the finale, because like Fleabag has that conversation with her dad and the statue thing happens, and then the thing that Claire says about running, well, the whole conversation about running through the airport, she's like, could you just imagine, I would have to buy a dummy ticket and then I just wander up to him in boots, he's gonna know all the effort I went through to get there and blah blah blah. And then she ends it by saying, anyway, the only person I'd run through an airport for is you. That is the nicest thing someone can say to you. I don't know how to explain what a nice thing that is to say.
I mean, that's it's a very perfect sibling thing.
It's a perfect sibling thing. It's also, I think it's so much nicer and sweeter because it's in their relationship, which has been so fraught the whole time that we've known them. I don't know. I agree with you. It has already stuck with me for almost a year, and I think it was absolutely the thing last year that I watched that I couldn't stop thinking about almost every day. Specifically, the ending where she walks away and we don't follow. And
we start to, and she tells us no.
She tells us no, and the ending with the priest for sure, because it's such a perfect encapsulation of what it feels like to lose your first truly reciprocal love. Because she didn't love Harry. Harry was easy. And then we see her have this string of affairs. But I believe, and I think it's how it's written, is she truly falls in love with the priest, despite the fact that it is is still a relatively damaging relationship because he can't truly love her back, but he does truly love her back despite his circumstance. And to lose that first instance of love when you both love each other equally and in the same way is, I think, it ends this comedic show as a tragedy in a way, despite the fact that it is then positive by her having overcome us, the audience, as a crutch. I've just, it's so, I can't stop thinking about that. And it's so fascinating to just keep thinking about, no matter how much I've done it. I just keep coming back to it because I think it says so many things just about humanity. I love it. I'm so glad you liked it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yay!
So, okay, well, that was Fleabag.
Awesome. Yeah. Obviously, both seasons are on Amazon. And like we said earlier, it will take you one afternoon.
I mean, I recommend
dedicated.
Yeah, if that's what you're trying to do, go for it. I watched it probably over the course of like 5 days.
Yeah, we did one season one night. Yeah, and one season next night. But yeah, I mean, watch it at your own pace. But I think it is bingeable.
Give it 3 episodes. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So then, if you want to tell us what you thought about Fleabag, you can follow us on Twitter.
I just did. Sorry.
No.
You're talking to our audience who's with us all the time.
All the time. You can follow us on Twitter at So I'm Watching, Instagram at So I'm Watching This Show. We are also on Facebook and Tumblr, So I'm Watching This Show. You can also follow along on our website, soimwatching.com, which links out to everything, including the episodes. And other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us. Bye.
That was my version of this theme song.